It's pretty clear which of the 5 teams in the Premier League are in danger of being relegated, so I've put them into the Championship on FIFA 22 and simulated the same season 10 times to see which one would be in the most trouble if they ended up in the second tier. We've also replaced them with the 5 teams fighting for playoff positions in the Championship, so in a weird sub-experiment we can also look at who might be an underrated hero club if they do end up being promoted. So with Fulham and Bournemouth in the Championship still, Burnley, Leeds, Everton, Watford and Norwich will have some competition. At least every single season one of them will miss out on the playoffs, so let's begin and have a look at the first season. As always, simulating a full season took a couple of minutes, but soon it was time to have a look at the first experiment league table from this video. As you'd expect, it was some of the bigger teams at the top of the league. You can see on the left that the first game of the season was Fulham against Everton, and Everton went on to do better than Fulham have in real life this season. Leeds, Norwich, Burnley and Fulham were also in the playoffs, with a surprise Stoke City making it up there too, and Watford were the worst placed Premier League team, finishing in 7th. Bournemouth also finishing 8th was pretty surprising, especially finishing below someone like Stoke. As you'd expect with some big teams getting relegated, their bigger players left. This included Dominic Calvert-Lewin heading to Juventus in a pretty surprising transfer. Perhaps even more surprising than someone like Calvert-Lewin heading to Italy was that Rafinha and Richarlison both stuck around, and it's good for their clubs that they did. They got 25 and 24 goals respectively. Demarai Gray also performed well, and of course Teemu Pukki absolutely destroyed the Championship for probably a 5th time now, but it was all in all a good season for all of our promoted clubs. As you would expect, with these clubs being so much better than some of the other teams, there was a lot of goals scored. This included 95 for Everton and 92 for Leeds. As these are the 2 best players and 2 best teams in the league, that's about what we would expect. If we look at how our promoted teams got on, the biggest surprise was 11th place Sheffield United, who of course did do something pretty similar in their first season back up. Nottingham Forest and Middlesbrough just about avoided the drop, with Brentford from the Premier League going down and Luton having the worst season in history, with just 9 points and conceding 80 goals. They're not quite as bad as Derby in the goals conceded, but in terms of points, they are actually the worst team in history. It was all pretty similar until I got to season 6. At this point, I was checking the table as I did and filling out my spreadsheet to work out the average positions. I scrolled up and I saw Everton's season. It's by far the best season I've ever seen an AI have, scoring 122 goals in just 46 games. That means they're winning on average 3-1 every single match. And winning they did, getting 38 wins, 7 draws and just a single loss mean they have by far the best record of any team ever. Burnley and Leeds both also reached triple figures, with Leeds also getting 100 goals and still not finishing second in the league. There were some more surprising things, with Bournemouth and West Brom finishing ahead of Fulham and Watford, but towards the bottom of the league it was pretty standard as always. Heading over to the Premier League table, and again it wasn't really that different to the other saves that we've done. As you'd expect, there would be a couple of the promoted teams in the bottom 3, this time Middlesbrough, Luton and Huddersfield all doing it, but also Sheffield United and Nottingham Forest just scraping out with 5 of the lowest points totals we've ever seen. So it was record-breaking highs at the top of the Championship and record-breaking average lows in the bottom of the Premier League. We're now going to skip ahead to the 10th simulation and we're going to have a look at the full averages of every single team in this experiment. So let's start with the obviously most successful team. Everton finished 1st or 2nd in every single season. In fact, they finished 1st in 8 of the 10 seasons, with an average position of 1.2. This means they're by far the easiest challenge if you decide to give this a go and want to simulate next year's Championship if you really do think Everton are going to go down. With them getting automatic promotion 10 times out of 10, you shouldn't have too much of a trouble, especially if you can keep hold of people like Demarai Gray and Richarlison, who were top scorers in most of the seasons I observed. The only other team that could keep up with the firepower of Everton was Leeds United. I mentioned it about season 6, which was their joint best finish of 2nd place when they got 100 goals in one season. This wasn't actually that rare. There was a couple of times that them, Watford and Norwich all managed it, and most of the time Everton would be in the 120s and maybe even 130s here and there. But Leeds on average finished 3.3, meaning that if you really do think Leeds are going to go down, you won't need to be Bielsa to get them back up, especially if you keep their initial squad. You should be expecting to get automatic promotion from the off. The next best team was Norwich, which is quite surprising because on average their team is actually worse rated than Burnley. Norwich on average finished 4.3, so quite a big gap between them, Leeds and Everton. But on a couple of occasions, Norwich did actually win the league, including on Season 4, where they beat out Everton by a single point, getting 104 points instead of Everton's 103. Norwich are also one of the better teams in the Championship every time they get relegated, so it's not really that surprising. The next two teams, Burnley and Watford, actually had the exact same average finishing position of 5.2, which is dangerously close to falling outside of the Championship playoffs. In fact, both of Burnley and Watford never actually finished inside the top two, and they definitely neither of them managed to win the league, which isn't to be that disheartened by, especially with the pure talent that Everton have. But finishing 5.3 on average, if you do want a slightly tougher challenge, maybe pick one of these. Watford have one of the most fun squads in my opinion from looking at their players, so maybe they're the team you need to go for. Looking at the teams that we moved up a division, I don't want to be accused of bias because they are the team I support, but Nottingham Forest were actually the best, finishing on average in 14.1 place. So this is just over 14th, usually rounding up to 15th. Sheffield United weren't far off, finishing 14.4 on average, but they did actually manage to finish last in the league, something that Forest never did, with Forest's worst position being 19th and Forest's best position being 10th, which they managed to get on 3 different occasions. It's pretty surprising that a Championship team with an average of 73 could actually manage to finish 10th in the Premier League, so I'm guessing the manager there did make some pretty interesting transfers. I'll have to go back, look at the saves, and I'll put them on the screen if I can find out who made the difference. Huddersfield were the next best team, with them on average finishing 16th. They mostly finished between 15th and 17th, with Luton and Middlesbrough mainly rounding out the bottom 3. The team that was surprisingly bad was Brentford, who, even though they're a Premier League team and in real life not doing too badly, they did manage to finish 20th or 19th on a bunch of occasions. Luton, of course, were the league's whipping boys, where they finished 20th on 4 different occasions and 19th on another 5. The only time they didn't finish 19th or 20th was in Season 5, where they managed to finish 18th, which is a pretty shocking finish. You've got to be expected with a team with the budget of Luton and such a small stadium that they probably aren't quite Premier League ready, but if you do want a challenge, why don't you put Luton in your Premier League, take over them as manager, and see if not only you can survive, but see if you can finish mid-table with them. I think with their small budget it'll be a real challenge, and therefore I think it would be pretty fun. So in conclusion, my recommended teams would be Luton if you want a challenge in the Premier League, Forest if you want a team that you can rebuild, similar with Sheffield, and you've also got Everton if you want an easy challenge to bring them back up to the Championship, or if you want something tougher with a more fun team, I would go for a squad like Watford or someone like Leeds, because you can even try and replicate how Bielsa got them up the first time. Watford were the Premier League team that finished the lowest, finishing 10th, and Everton were the most successful. Luton were the lowest team in the Premier League, and Forest were the most successful there too. Thank you for watching this video. If you've got any ideas for other things I can do this kind of video on, then please do let me know, possibly doing World Cups or something. That would be pretty interesting to see which teams EA think are most likely to win the World Cups. But you never know, Champions Leagues, anything, let me know in the comments if you've got any suggestions, subscribe if you want to see more like this, like the video if you enjoyed any of it, or if you fancy supporting the channel in any way, please do consider giving a super thanks to help fund some of my weirder ideas I've got planned in the future. Thank you all for watching, I'll see you soon for another video, thank you, and goodbye.